The desert wind carried a strange whisper, a sound the Roman legions had never heard before. It drifted over the sands like a warning from some distant god, the metallic rattle of thousands of arrows swaying in their quivers, waiting to be unleashed. As the Romans stared across the shimmering emptiness of Mesopotamia, they felt it in their bones. Something was wrong, terribly wrong, even before they could see the enemy they had come to conquer. What happened on that sun-scorched plain would drown itself in Roman nightmares for generations. It would become a humiliation so deep the Senate barely dared to speak of it. A disaster so total that the few cursed enough to survive longed for death rather than the memories that followed them. A defeat not born of bravery or honor, but of arrogance, vanity, and a leader who chased glory into a desert that devoured him whole. This is the story of the battle where no one survived. Rome's greatest humiliation, a story of ambition warped into obsession, a lie that lured 40,000 Roman soldiers to their deaths, and a desert empire that fought like a phantom and struck like a god. But before the arrows fell and the sand drank Roman blood, the story begins with a single man, Marcus Crassus. To Rome, Crassus was Dives, the rich, a titan of money, corruption, and influence. He bought burning properties for fractions of their worth. We built them cheaply and rented them back to the desperate. He sent his private fire brigade racing to flames, not to help, but to bargain. Sell your home for pennies, or let it burn. Entire neighborhoods rose and fell under his calculations. And he became powerful. Too powerful for a man with no military glory. For in Rome, wealth was admired, but military triumph was worshipped. Crassus had fame, fortune, and political influence, but he had no legendary conquest. Caesar had Gaul, Pompey had the pirates and the East. Crassus had only Spartacus, a rebel slave. To Romans, defeating slaves was not glory, it was housekeeping. Crassus hungered for more, so when he became governor of Syria, he saw a chance to carve his own legend. Parthia glittered on the horizon, wealthy, mysterious, and vulnerable, or so he believed. Never mind the Senate's warnings. Never mind the omens. Never mind that Rome knew nothing about the desert empire or its style of war. Crassus wanted his triumph, and triumph would become tomb. He marched out with 7 legions, over 40,000 infantry, cavalry, and auxiliaries, confidence blazing like the desert sun. The Roman eagles glinted above them, symbols of invincibility. The men laughed, they sang, they believed they were marching to easy victory. Why wouldn't they? Rome had crushed every foe for centuries. But Parthia was not Gaul, not Spain, not the slave pits of Italy. Parthia was a land of riders and archers. Unstoppable horses and bows that could kill at distances Rome could not imagine. Their armies moved like sandstorms, never where you expected, never standing where you wanted them to stand. And the man leading them, Surena, was something Rome had never faced. A noble so wealthy, he traveled with an entourage that looked like a royal parade. A general so brilliant, he made victories look effortless. Tall, elegant, charismatic, he wore armor so polished, it captured the sun. Parthian soldiers adored him. Roman historians grudgingly admired him, and he would soon orchestrate one of history's most perfectly executed traps. Crassus walked straight into it. An Arab guide named Augustus approached, claiming to be a loyal ally. He insisted the Parthians were fleeing. He beckoned Crassus into the desert, away from the Euphrates, away from water and safety. Cassius, Crassus' most competent officer, begged him not to follow. Stay near the river, he warned. The desert will kill us before the Parthians ever do. Crassus ignored him. He followed Augustus deeper and deeper into the wasteland, into the jaws of Surena. The sun grew merciless. Armor burned skin. Thirst clawed at the men. They marched through dust and mirages, and still no enemy appeared. Until a thin black line shimmered at the horizon. It moved. The Romans stiffened. A sound rose. Thousands of hooves. Thousands of rattling arrows. Then the Parthians emerged. Ghost-like riders with bowstrings ready. Cataphracts armored head to toe, shining like metal statues. And behind them, camels laden with sacks, heavy enough to hold enough arrows to blot out the sun. Surena halted. Silence, stillness. Then the drums began. Slow, deep, foreboding. The Romans raised their shields. Crassus ordered the legions to advance, and the Parthians answered not with a charge, but with the sky. Arrows rose in a glittering arc, vanished into the glare, then fell like a storm of iron. Shields thudded. Men screamed. Blood hit sand. The Romans tried to march forward, but the Parthians drifted away, shooting as they retreated, their famed Parthian shot, firing backward while galloping at full speed. The Romans had no answer. Their javelins fell short. Their cavalry was weak. Their heavy infantry could not catch a single Parthian horse, and the arrows did not stop. Camel drivers refilled quivers endlessly. The barrage was eternal, a rain of death. The Roman line strained, bent, fractured. Then Crassus made his most fatal decision. He ordered his son, Publius, brave and beloved, to lead a cavalry charge to break the Parthian lines. Publius charged into a trap. The horse archers opened, revealing cataphracts behind them. The impact shattered the Roman cavalry. The dust cloud hid the slaughter, and when it finally settled, the Parthians rode toward Crassus carrying a spear tipped with Publius' severed head. The Roman legions howled in grief. Crassus collapsed inside. Surena smiled. The desert had claimed its first Roman soul, and it was hungry for more. Publius' head, lifted high on a Parthian spear, became the desert's cruel proclamation. The Romans stared in stunned, hollow grief. Some screamed his name, some cursed the gods, others simply stared, their minds shattering under the weight of the impossible. Crassus did not scream. He broke. The man who had marched into the desert craving glory now stood like a ghost, staring at the mutilated remains of his son, the heir to his ambitions, the proof of his legitimacy. The desert wind tugged at his cloak, but nothing moved him. He was a leader in form only. Inside, something vital had already died. Surena watched him with chilling composure. The moment was deliberate, the timing perfect. He had not shown Publius' head in the midst of battle, but in the quiet lull, when despair could rip through the Roman ranks with maximum cruelty. A psychological strike more devastating than any arrow. The Parthian army halted again. Drums quieted. The horse archers retreated to a teasing distance, waiting, watching. The Romans tried to regroup, raising shields heavy with arrows. Blood dripped from leather. Men leaned into each other, exhausted, terrified, stunned. Then came the next wave. Arrows fell again, endless, precise, merciless. The Parthians never closed in for hand-to-hand combat. They did not need to. Why strike a snake when you can suffocate it with smoke? Why break a sword when you can bend it until it snaps? The Roman formations twisted under the constant barrage. Shields vibrated with impacts. Men collapsed from heat and thirst. The sun itself felt like another enemy, scorching every exposed edge of armor. Crassus could barely speak. Cassius took command where he could, shouting orders to fall back, regroup, tighten ranks. But Parthian arrows found new gaps every second. The legions were no longer fighting an enemy. They were enduring a storm. And every moment of endurance cost more lives. When evening finally arrived, Surena withdrew his forces, just enough to let the Romans breathe, but not enough to let them hope. He wanted them alive. He wanted them exhausted, terrified, and desperate. The night belonged to Rome. The advantage belonged to Parthia. The wounded moaned in the darkness, unable to drink, unable to move. Officers moved between clusters of survivors, whispering that maybe they could still march away in the night. But the desert was wide, pathless, and filled with Parthian scouts. If the army moved in the dark, it would scatter. If it stayed still, it would be surrounded. They were already surrounded. At midnight, the survivors, what remained of 7 once-proud legions, stumbled through darkness toward the small fortified town of Carrhae. They carried the wounded, dragging them across the sand, leaving trails like scars across the desert. Men collapsed along the way, begging for water. Some died quietly, others begged their comrades to leave them behind. By sunrise, the survivors reached Carrhae, a miserable, low-walled outpost, offering little more than shade and a well. But to men who had endured a day of hell, Carrhae looked like salvation. It was not. As exhausted soldiers slept against the walls, Cassius gathered the officers. "We go north to Armenia," he said. "Their king will shelter us. Or we go south to the Euphrates and cross the river. Either way, we must move. The Parthians will be here by dawn." Crassus sat silent, unmoving, staring at a lantern flame, as if trying to find meaning in its trembling light. When the officers pressed him for a decision, he muttered, "I will not return to Syria defeated." It was not strategy. It was denial. A dying man clinging to the last illusion he still possessed. But the men did not deserve to die for Crassus' pride. They had followed him into the desert. Now they needed someone to lead them out. Cassius urged the officers to move without Crassus. Others insisted they needed their commander. Some wanted to abandon him. Others wanted to protect him. The army fractured into arguments, exhaustion fraying tempers like rotting rope. Before any decision could be made, dust clouds appeared on the horizon. Parthian scout Surena had returned. His army fanned out, encircling Carrhae like vultures around a dying beast. They did not attack. They did not rush. They simply closed the exits. Every road, every trail, every crack through which a legionary could escape. Then they waited. They knew thirst and fear would do the killing. At dawn, Crassus attempted a breakout. The shattered legions marched from Carrhae in a square formation, desperate to reach the hills where cavalry could not maneuver. And Surena struck. Arrows rained again. Cataphracts charged. The Roman square buckled, twisted, collapsed. Then nature itself betrayed Rome. A sandstorm swept across the plain, erasing the horizon, choking the soldiers, tearing the formation apart. Romans stumbled blindly, coughing, clutching shields that protected them from nothing. Parthian archers moved through the storm like ghosts, their horses sure-footed, their shots unerring. Men died without ever seeing who killed them. By afternoon, the Roman army was no longer an army, just clusters of survivors, just pockets of panic, just men running in all directions. Cassius escaped with a handful of cavalry. Hundreds fled north. Hundreds more were cut down. Crassus stumbled with a shrinking band of survivors. He was alive, but only because fate had not yet decided how to end his story. Surena had, and the trap was nearly finished. By evening, the Parthian commander approached Crassus's position, not with arrows, not with chariots, but with an offer, a white flag, a gesture of peace, a promise of negotiation. Peace, after so much death. The Romans didn't trust it. They argued, begged, demanded. Crassus refused. Cassius was gone, the only officer with the authority to counter Crassus' decisions. The remaining commanders feared it was a trick. But Crassus saw hope. Or perhaps he saw an escape from the shame of returning to Rome alive. Surena called out, his voice calm, confident, almost generous. "Come speak with us, Crassus. Let us end this." Crassus descended the hill with a small escort, and the desert held its breath. Crassus descended the hill like a man walking toward his own judgment. The wind carried no sound, no birds, no distant hooves, no whispers from the Romans he left behind. Only the soft scrape of sandals on dry earth. His officers trailed him nervously, glancing from the Parthian delegation to the shrinking distance between the two parties. Surena sat mounted on a magnificent horse, his armor gleaming like silver fire. His posture radiated confidence, ease, absolute command. The Parthian nobles formed a semicircle around them, their calm expressions betraying nothing. They were predators waiting for the prey to step closer. Crassus approached with trembling dignity. Dust clung to his sweat-soaked tunic. His face was sunken, drained of hope. He tried to compose himself, to stand like the governor of Syria, the conqueror of Spartacus, the wealthiest man in Rome. But the desert had stripped him bare. Surena extended a hand. "Rome and Parthia," he said smoothly, "need not be enemies." The words floated in the heat. They sounded soothing, even reasonable. But behind the softness lay steel. Crassus hesitated. Every instinct urged him to step back. Every instinct told him this was wrong. But pride had carved itself into his bones. He could not flee. He could not surrender publicly. He could not return home as the man who led Rome's greatest army into annihilation and then ran. He reached out to take Surena's hand. That was the final step into the trap. The moment their hands clasped, Surena's grip hardened. The Parthian nobles surged forward. Crassus pulled away in shock, but the movement only tightened the snare. Hands grabbed his arms, his cloak, his wrists. His officers shouted, lunging to defend him, but they too were seized. Shouts erupted. Dust flew. Blades flashed. Crassus struggled wildly. "What are you doing?" This was to be a parley. This was Surena leaned forward, his voice low and cold. "You came here seeking peace, but peace is not yours to grant." The Parthians dragged Crassus toward the ground. His officers fought desperately, punching, kicking, clawing, anything to free him. The scuffle escalated into a chaotic swirl of bodies. Roman steel met Parthian fists. A few soldiers broke free, only to be cut down. And then the killing began. A Parthian sword flashed. Blood struck the sand. Crassus gasped. They forced him to his knees, pinning his arms as he thrashed. His eyes widened in horror, in disbelief, in the final realization that he had been defeated, not by armies, not by tactics, not by fate, but by himself. A blade pierced him. He shuddered. The desert accepted another Roman soul. The officers around him screamed. Some died fighting, others died begging. Within seconds, the entire Roman delegation lay on the sand beside their fallen commander. Surena stepped back and watched the scene with a curious, almost analytical expression. There was no rage, no triumph, only a cold, measured satisfaction. He addressed his nobles. "Rome loves gold. Let us give Crassus what he desired most." To the Parthians, it was poetic justice. To the Romans, it was a nightmare. They took Crassus' severed head, poured molten gold into his mouth, whether literal or symbolic. History still debates him, prepared it as a trophy for display. Crassus had marched into the desert seeking riches, glory, and immortality. He found none. He died with gold burning his throat. Ambition turned to punishment. Back on the hill, the Roman survivors saw movement in the distance. They heard the shouts. They waited for Crassus to return. He did not. Instead, the Parthians returned with his head, and silence fell over the broken legions. The soldiers stared, frozen in horror. Some dropped their shields, others fell to their knees. A few let out sounds no human language could describe, cries of grief, disbelief, and the realization that their last reason to fight had just died. The Parthians gave no time for mourning. Surena lifted the head high for all to see. It shone with grisly finality in the sun. Then he signaled his cavalry. The slaughter began. The Roman formation disintegrated almost instantly. Men ran, tripping over bodies, stumbling in blind terror. Parthian arrows tore through the fleeing mass like wolves through sheep. Horsemen cut down stragglers in sweeping, merciless arcs. The desert filled with screams that echoed against the empty horizon. No discipline remained. No formation. No command structure. Only panic. Those who tried to surrender were cut down. Those who tried to hide were dragged out and executed. Those who tried to fight were surrounded and skewered from every side. The hill became a killing ground. Shields fell from trembling hands. Spear shafts snapped. Bodies piled on bodies. Standards, the sacred eagles of Rome, fell in the sand, trampled beneath hooves. Surena had destroyed Crassus' army in the field. Now he destroyed it completely. By the time the sun dipped, the desert was quiet again. The wind whispered over dunes littered with Roman dead. Armor gleamed among the stones. Arrows stuck upright like iron thorns. The last moans faded into nothing. Surena surveyed the field. The richest man in Rome lay headless. His army, 40,000 strong, was gone. The desert had decided the outcome long before the first arrow flew. And now, with Rome's pride broken and its legions obliterated, Surena prepared to deliver the final message to the world. Parthia had defeated Rome, decisively, completely, irreversibly, or so it seemed, because though the desert buried the body, the consequences of Carrhae were only beginning. Surena rode from the battlefield with trophies no Parthian commander had ever possessed. The Roman eagles, symbols Rome considered sacred, invincible, almost divine, hung from spears like glittering corpses. Behind him, camel caravans carried captured armor, severed heads, and the twisted remnants of what had once been 7 proud legions. As he approached Parthian lands, the story spread faster than the dust. Villagers gathered along the roadsides, eager to glimpse the conqueror of Rome. Children climbed earthen walls. Merchants abandoned their stalls. Priests raised their hands to the heavens in awe. Never in memory had a Roman army been annihilated. Not like this, not so completely. And so they celebrated. Parthian drums thundered across city streets. Flags fluttered from balconies. Musicians played triumphant songs. Surena's procession entered Ctesiphon like a river of silver and blood. He rode tall and calm, his armor polished to a mirror's sheen, his expression composed, not gloating, not arrogant, simply in command of a moment he had choreographed with mathematical precision. Behind him, slaves carried Crassus' golden armor. Others bore the Roman eagles, their wings still stained with dust. And at the heart of the parade, displayed like a grim trophy, was Crassus' severed head, crowned mockingly with a wreath. The Parthians roared in pride. Rome had been humbled, but victory carries its own danger. And Surena's triumph shone too brightly. In the palace, King Orotes too watched with a complicated expression. Surena had saved Parthia. Surena had defeated Rome. Surena was beloved by nobles and commoners alike. Too beloved. The king's jealousy, that ancient poison of rulers, began to swirl. No monarch tolerates a general more admired than himself. No throne stands steady when another man casts a longer shadow. Even as the celebrations thundered on, Surena's fate was already sealed. But before envy turned fatal, the news reached Rome. In Antioch, in Syria, in every Roman settlement along the eastern frontier, panic spread like wildfire. The survivors of Carrhae staggered into the city, gaunt, wounded, trembling. Their armor hung in shreds. Their eyes were hollow. They spoke of endless arrows, of ghost-like horsemen, of Publius' severed head. They spoke of Crassus' foolish decisions, his refusal to retreat, his pathetic end. Citizens refused to believe them, until more survivors arrived. Antioch trembled. Traitors fled. Local kings withdrew their allegiance. Town elders bolted their gates. Everyone expected Parthia to invade, to sweep across the frontier and finish what it had started. In the governor's hall, Cassius, the only surviving senior officer, stood before panicked officials and delivered the truth with brutal simplicity. There is no army south of Armenia. We are all that remains. Rome had suffered defeats before. Rome had been ambushed before. Rome had bled before, but never had Rome been annihilated. The news traveled west, carried by terrified envoys, ship captains, and merchants. It reached the Italian peninsula as whispers at first, then as shouts. Carrhae was a wound Rome could not hide. In the Senate, outrage erupted. Some blamed Crassus for his greed. Some blamed Pompey for refusing reinforcements. Some blamed Caesar for being absent in Gaul. Some blamed the gods themselves. The chamber shook with shouting, accusations, frantic gestures. Senators who once basked in luxury now cried for defensive measures. Priests declared omens dark. Mothers filled the forum demanding answers. Veterans stared at the ground, fists clenched, feeling the shame of a defeat they had not fought. And beneath all the noise lay a quiet truth. Rome was afraid. The Republic had been broken before, by Hannibal, by civil wars, by Sulla's terror, but never had it been humiliated by a foreign empire in such a spectacular fashion. Rome's pride cracked. Rome's confidence faltered. Rome's enemies watched, and in Gaul, Julius Caesar received the news with a calm that belied its significance. He understood immediately what Carrhae meant. Crassus was dead. The third triumvir had fallen. Pompey now stood alone in Rome. The balance of power had shattered. The first stone of civil war had been laid. Carrhae didn't just kill an army. It broke the Republic's spine. Meanwhile, in Parthia, the celebrations quieted. But Surena's glory did not fade. His name spread beyond the empire's borders. Envoys from distant kingdoms spoke of his triumph. Parthian nobles praised him openly. His soldiers adored him as a hero chosen by the gods. And Orodes noticed, in the ancient world, kings feared two types of men: those who failed disastrously, and those who succeeded too spectacularly. Surena was the latter. The king's paranoia festered. Whispers filled the palace corridors. Ministers murmured that Surena's popularity threatened the throne. Generals warned that soldiers followed Surena's orders faster than the king's. And so, quietly, discreetly, Orodes had Surena removed. The best general Parthia had ever produced, the hero who crushed Rome, died not by Roman steel, but by royal envy. His body was buried, his name whispered, his legacy sealed. Parthia lost the man who made it invincible. And years later, when Rome returned stronger, wiser, hungrier, Parthia would miss him dearly. Far from the courts and politics, the Roman prisoners, nearly 10,000 men, marched east in long, miserable columns. Beaten, starved, pushed beyond exhaustion, they moved deeper into Parthian territory. Some collapsed along the way. Some were executed. Many survived, but none ever returned to Rome. They were sent to the empire's farthest frontier, used as laborers, border guards, or mercenaries. Legends would one day claim they fought in Central Asia, even reaching lands near China's borders. Whether myth or truth, one thing was certain: Rome lost them forever. Their families mourned without closure. Their names faded from memory. Their legions were never reconstituted. Carrhae had swallowed them whole. And Rome felt that loss like a phantom limb. The battlefield itself, where so many Romans fell, disappeared into the desert. Wind buried shields, sand covered bones. Time erased the footprints of armies. Only scattered arrowheads and broken spear tips remained beneath the dunes. Travelers would later claim the place felt cursed, that the wind still carried the echoes of dying men. That shadows moved where nothing lived. Whether superstition or truth, Carrhae became a silent monument to folly, the graveyard of Crassus' ambition. But even as Rome mourned, stewed, and raged, it began to prepare. The Republic sent engineers east. They studied Parthian tactics. They redesigned formations. They expanded auxiliary cavalry. They trained archers from Crete, Syria, and Arabia. Rome never forgot its defeats. Rome learned from them. Carrhae had humbled the empire, but humility sharpened it. The Romans were adapting, and Parthia, without Surena, would be far slower to do the same. But the path to vengeance, to reclaiming the lost eagles, would not be simple. And the man Rome chose to lead that vengeance would fail just as spectacularly. His name was Mark Antony, and his story would become another chapter, written in the long, dark shadow of Carrhae. Carrhae didn't just linger in Rome's memory. It festered. It became an open wound, a whisper in the streets, a shadow in the Senate. Rome demanded vengeance, demanded justice, demanded a man bold enough to restore the honor Crassus had thrown into the desert. That man, Rome believed, would be Mark Antony. Antony, fierce, charismatic, larger than life, had always lived in Caesar's shadow. But after Caesar's assassination, Antony emerged, not just as a general, but as a force of destiny. He commanded loyalty from veterans, admiration from common citizens, and fear from the Senate. He was everything Crassus wasn't: a real soldier, a real leader, a man beloved by the legions. When Antony promised that he, not Crassus, would avenge Rome's humiliation in Parthia, the people believed him. They needed to. Carrhae still haunted them. And Antony, carrying the confidence of a man destined to conquer the world, swore he would bring the lost eagles home. But the desert that devoured Crassus was patient. It was waiting for Antony to. After Caesar's death, Rome collapsed into chaos. Brutus and Cassius fled east. Civil war sparked across provinces. Cities declared loyalties overnight. And in the midst of this storm, Antony maneuvered with ruthless ambition. He defeated Rome's enemies in the west. He forged alliances in the east. He secured Egypt with Cleopatra at his side. And then he turned his eyes toward Parthia. He gathered an enormous army, far larger than Crassus' force. More cavalry, more archers, more supplies, more veterans, more of everything the Romans had lacked during the disaster at Carrhae. On paper, Antony's campaign looked unstoppable. but so had Crassus. That is the thing about deserts. They do not care about paper. The Armenian king, Artavasdes, offered Antony advice. Hard-earned, cautious, wise advice. The kind Crassus ignored years earlier. Take the northern route, the king warned. Fight through fortified land. Bring your siege engines. Let us face Parthia together. Antony listened. He nodded. He agreed. Then, in a fatal echo of Crassus' arrogance, he ignored everything he'd just agreed to. He wanted speed. He wanted shock. He wanted to strike the heart of Parthia before it could prepare. Antony marched straight into the open plains, straight into history's cruel repetition, straight onto the path of Crassus' ghost. At first, the campaign felt glorious. Victories came quickly. Parthian towns fell easily. Scouts reported enemy retreat. Roman morale surged. Antony smiled. He believed Parthia trembled. But Parthia never trembled. It lured. And when Antony reached his true target, the fortress city of Fraspa, the trap closed. Under cover of darkness, Parthian raiders struck Antony's supply lines. They burned his siege engines, stole his provisions, slaughtered his animals, and vanished into the night. Antony awoke to a nightmare. He could not take the city. He could not starve it out. He could not break Parthian numbers. And behind him, the desert waited with open jaws. He had walked into the same void Crassus had chased. And the void answered. The Parthian counterattack began with the same tactics that destroyed Crassus: swift riders, distant arrows, hit-and-run precision. But Antony's men were veterans. They held longer. They formed tighter. They adapted faster. Still, the Parthians bled them every day. Antony soon realized the only path left was retreat, a long, brutal march through hostile territory, with Parthians circling like wolves, their bows whispering death with every encounter. The retreat became a nightmare engraved in the memory of every survivor. The Romans marched through icy mountains, deserts of dust, ravines haunted by invisible enemies. Parthian horse archers struck relentlessly. Every morning began with arrows. Every night ended with losses. Men died standing. Men died crawling. Men died begging for mercy. Men died screaming for water. Antony, once so confident, marched silently among them, armor dented, cloak torn, face hollowed by the same desert sun that consumed Crassus. By the time he limped back into Roman territory, nearly a third of his army was gone. And the worst truth was not the losses, it was failure. Antony had promised Rome vengeance. Instead, he delivered another humiliation, another generation scarred, another dream shattered, another victory for Parthia, without Parthia lifting more than a bow. Carrhae had struck again. When Antony returned to Alexandria, Rome was already turning against him. Octavian Caesar's heir saw the opening he needed. He seized it with both hands. He whispered to senators. He whispered to the public. He whispered to Rome itself. Antony loved Cleopatra more than Rome. Antony abandoned the Republic. Antony failed to avenge our dead. Antony failed to reclaim the eagles. Carrhae, once a distant wound, reopened. Now the shame was laid on Antony. He had become Crassus' heir, not in wealth, but in failure. Antony tried to rally support. He tried to spin the retreat as a tactical setback. He tried to prepare a second invasion of Parthia, but Rome no longer believed him. Octavian's propaganda spread like a plague. The people wanted a savior, not another dreamer. And Octavian played the role perfectly. He was calm, disciplined, virtuous, or so he claimed. He promised stability. He promised order. He promised revenge. And Rome listened. Rome always listened to the man who promised to erase its shame. The final confrontation came at Actium, a naval battle that would decide Rome's future. Antony might have won. His ships were larger. His veterans were experienced. His commanders were competent. But the ghosts of Carrhae refused to leave him. Cleopatra panicked and fled with her fleet. Antony followed her. His navy collapsed. His army surrendered. Octavian marched into Egypt. And Antony, once the hope of Rome, ended his life in Cleopatra's arms. A tragic end. A poetic end. A final echo of a man who tried to tame the East and failed. With Antony dead, Octavian now stood unchallenged. He consolidated power. He remade the state. He became Augustus, the first emperor of Rome. And with the stability of empire, he focused on the wound no one else had been able to heal. Rome's scar, Rome's shame, Rome's shame, Rome's lost honor. The eagles, and Augustus would reclaim them, not with legions, but with brilliance. Antony was gone. Cleopatra was gone. Rome's civil wars were over at last. And standing above the ashes of the Republic was one man, calm, patient, purposeful, who understood the wound of Carrhae better than anyone alive. Octavian, soon to be Augustus. He inherited a Rome bleeding from decades of chaos. A Rome emotionally shattered by humiliation in the East. A Rome that wanted one thing above all else. Not new conquests, not new wealth, not new provinces, but dignity. For 33 long years, the lost eagles of Crassus hung in Parthian temples as mocking symbols. For 33 years, Rome's honor had been on foreign soil. For 33 years, Rome had remembered that there was a place where Roman legions broke utterly. Augustus knew that the eagles mattered more than revenge, more than territory, more than battle. The eagles were the soul of Rome, and Rome wanted its soul back. But unlike Crassus or Antony, Augustus was not led by pride. He was led by strategy. To reclaim the eagles, Augustus would not march into the desert at the head of legions. He would march into Parthia, with diplomacy sharpened into a weapon. One Parthia could not refuse, because Augustus understood something the Republic never had. Sometimes peace wins what war cannot. Before Augustus could turn east, he needed to secure Rome's foundations. He reorganized provinces. He reformed the legions. He rebuilt shattered alliances. He restored temples. He revived the economy. He brought stability to a fractured empire. Every reform, every law, every display of order and control was preparation. Augustus knew Parthia watched. He knew Parthia remembered how divided Rome had been. He knew Parthia believed Rome was still weak, and that belief was the key to his strategy. Parthia underestimated him. Parthia believed Rome as new emperor was too busy putting out fires at home to challenge the East, but Augustus was calculating. Every step he took brought him closer to the one thing he needed before approaching Parthia: leverage, and he found it in Parthia's new king. Phrates was not like Surena. He was not like Orodes. He was not a hero. He was not a brilliant commander. He was not admired. He was ruthless, even by ancient standards. He executed his rivals. He murdered family members. He exiled nobles. He punished anyone who challenged his authority. Parthia was powerful, yes, but under Phrates, Parthia was unstable. Nobles whispered, generals grumbled, allies drifted, enemies plotted. Phrates ruled by fear, and fear is a weak foundation. Augustus saw the cracks. He saw the paranoia. He saw an empire trembling behind its gold-plated facade, and he struck, not with swords, but with an offer. A diplomatic masterstroke wrapped in courtesy and pressure. Augustus sent envoys, gifts, and subtle threats. He offered recognition of Phrates' throne, legitimacy from the greatest power in the West. He offered a political alliance. He offered peace. All Phrates had to do was return the eagles to Rome. This was sacred treasure. To Parthia, they were trophies, yes, but trophies that brought more political trouble than benefit now that Parthia was unstable. Phrates hesitated. He weighed the costs. He weighed the risks. He weighed the growing hostility among his own nobles. And slowly, Rome tightened the noose. Not through armies, not through battles, but through negotiation, pressure, and brilliance. Finally, astonishingly, Phrates agreed. In 20 BC, a quiet, unbelievable event took place. Without a sword drawn, without a single Roman legion marching east, without a drop of blood spilled, Parthia returned. The eagles, all of them Crassus, lost standards. Antony's lost standards. Every symbol that Rome had mourned for a generation, the eagles were carried back across the frontier, escorted by Parthian envoys. Their return was not loud, not violent, not dramatic, but it was historic. Rome erupted into celebration, a celebration greater than most war triumphs. The legions roared with pride. Veterans wept openly. Senators praised Augustus as a savior of Rome. Poets declared the moment divine. And Augustus.com, dignified, steady, stepped forward with a message. Rome had been healed. The wound of Carrhae, after 33 years, was finally closed. Temples were dedicated. Altars were raised. An entire monument, the Temple of Mars altar, was built to honor the moment Rome reclaimed its honor. Augustus didn't merely avenge Carrhae, he redeemed it. But the true brilliance of Augustus' victory lay in what he understood that no other Roman leader had grasped. Rome did not need to conquer Parthia. Rome did not need to destroy Parthia. Rome did not need to bleed more soldiers into the desert. Rome needed its dignity. And with the return of the eagles, the triumph of Augustus became eternal. He used peace to achieve what war had destroyed. He used diplomacy to achieve what pride had ruined. He used patience to achieve what ambition had shattered. Carrhae, the battlefield where Rome lost everything, had finally given something back: honor. And yet the story was not finished, because the consequences of Carrhae extended far beyond the eagles. Rome had been humbled. Rome had been reshaped. Rome had changed forever. But to understand the true legacy of Carrhae, the legacy that would echo for centuries, we must go deeper into the reforms it inspired, into the fear it planted, into the political earthquakes it caused, into the cultural scars it left, into the armies it changed, into the minds of the generals it haunted. Carrhae was not merely a defeat. It was the beginning of the end of the Republic, the beginning of the rise of empire, the beginning of a new world. And Augustus' victory was not the final chapter, but the turning of a page. The eagles had returned, gleaming, sacred, triumphant. But Rome's transformation had only begun. For although Augustus restored the Republic's honor, the memory of Carrhae remained woven into the very fabric of Roman identity. Like a scar, the body forgets to heal. The story of that defeat lived on in every military campfire tale, every Senate debate about the East, every mother's whispered prayer when her son enlisted. Rome had learned something it had never imagined. It was mortal, and that lesson changed everything. Long before Carrhae, Rome believed itself unstoppable. Victory stacked upon victory, province upon province. Enemies fell like dominoes. Kings kneeled. Cities surrendered. Rome marched across the world like a force of nature. But Carrhae shattered that illusion. The Romans discovered painfully, intimately, that their legions, disciplined and immovable as they were, had weaknesses. Real weaknesses. Structural weaknesses. Blind spots baked into their identity. Parthia exposed every one of them. The Roman heavy infantry, the pride of the empire, was slow against riders. The Roman javelin fighters were helpless against long-range horse archers. The Roman cavalry was a mere afterthought compared to Parthian cataphracts. The Roman supply lines, so dependable in Europe, were useless in an ocean of sand. The world learned that Rome could be beaten. Rome learned that Rome could be beaten. And that simple truth ignited a revolution. In the years after Carrhae, the Roman army began to evolve. No more complacency. No more underestimating the East. No more assuming that discipline alone would win every battle. Rome adapted. Commanders integrated foreign archers, Syrian bowmen, Arabian mounted skirmishers, Cretan sharpshooters. They expanded cavalry forces, no longer satisfied with token numbers. They studied Parthian tactics with a mixture of horror and fascination. They trained legions to fight in looser formations when needed. They prepared for enemies who didn't fight like Gauls or Germans, but like ghosts. Rome had learned the cost of arrogance. And though the empire would still struggle against steppe tactics, Huns, Sarmatians, Scythians, it would fight with a new awareness, a new caution, a new respect for the enemies whose greatest weapon was mobility. Carrhae forced Rome to grow. Sometimes evolution begins in blood. Yet military reform was only one of the legacies of Carrhae. The political consequences were even deeper. Crassus had once been the glue holding Caesar and Pompey apart, a counterweight of wealth and ambition. With Crassus gone, the triangle snapped into a line, and two men stared down its length at each other like duelists. Pompey, Caesar. Pompey. Without Crassus between them, rivalry became paranoia. Paranoia became hostility. Hostility became war. Carrhae did not just kill an army, it killed the Republic. Because without Crassus, Rome had no balance. Without balance, Rome had no peace. Without peace, Rome marched toward its own destruction. Every battle in Caesar's civil war, from the Rubicon to Pharsalus, was a domino tipped by Crassus' death. Every decree, every execution, every purge flowed from the vacuum Carrhae created. Had Crassus lived, perhaps history might have been different. Perhaps the Republic would have lingered longer. Perhaps Caesar's rise would have been tempered. But Carrhae reshaped the future. Rome's greatest defeat became the seed of its greatest transformation. And beyond politics, Carrhae reshaped something even more profound: Rome's relationship with the East. Before the disaster, Romans viewed the East as a prize, a land of spice and silk, temples and gold, a place to be conquered, taxed, and absorbed. After Carrhae, that view changed. Parthia was no longer an exotic curiosity. It was a rival, a mirror, a civilization that demanded respect. Rome and Parthia stood like two lions on opposite sides of a river, powerful, wary, equal. Each wanted prestige, each wanted recognition, each wanted influence across the frontier lands that lay between them. They fought proxy wars in Armenia. They negotiated borders. They exchanged ambassadors. They threatened each other constantly. They tested one another's strength. Neither empire ever fully conquered the other. The rivalry became legendary, a cold war of ancient times, and it began at Carrhae. But the most haunting legacy was the fate of the Roman captives. Nearly 10,000 men were marched east after the battle, not as citizens, not as soldiers, but as property. Property of Parthia, to be used as the kings saw fit. Some were assigned to border fortresses, guarding against nomadic raiders. Others built irrigation canals, temples, roads. Others fought as mercenaries for decades. And some vanished into the great unknown. Ancient rumors claimed a group of Roman soldiers eventually reached Central Asia, that they fought under a foreign king, that they formed a distinctive shield wall, a tortoise formation, in a battle near the edge of China, that the Chinese chroniclers wrote of a strange foreign phalanx who fought with discipline unlike anything they'd seen. True or not, the story endured. The ghost legion of Carrhae Roman soldiers living out their final years in a land so far from home that even the winds did not know their names. Whether myth or memory, the idea itself reveals the enduring power of Rome's greatest defeat. Carrhae broke families, shattered legions, scattered men to the ends of the earth, and Rome never found them again. Even centuries later, Roman writers would speak of Carrhae with a shudder. Plutarch recounted the arrogance that doomed Crassus. Cassius Dio described the horror of the retreat. Velleius Paterculus wrote of the shame, and every generation of Romans retold the story, the cautionary tale of what happens when pride blinds a leader. Because Carrhae wasn't just a battle, it was a warning. A warning about ambition, a warning about ignorance, a warning about what happens when a nation believes itself untouchable. Rome, the conqueror of nations, the master of the Mediterranean, the eternal city, discovered its own limits on a lonely plain in Mesopotamia, and it never forgot. But to understand the full weight of that memory, the pain, the reflection, the extraordinary transformation that followed, we must travel into the mind of the men who lived through it, what they saw, what they endured, what they carried home. The survivors of Carrhae walked in shadows for the rest of their lives, and the story of those survivors, their trauma, their silence, their legacy, is where our journey continues. The survivors of Carrhae returned to Rome, broken in ways no poet could fully capture. They did not march home in triumph. They limped, they crawled, they staggered into the cities of the East half dead, carrying wounds that would never heal, not in flesh and not in memory. Rome did not welcome them as heroes. Rome barely knew what to do with them. They came back without their standards, without their commanders, without their brothers, without answers. Some were questioned like criminals. Others sat in silence, staring at the ground. Many refused to speak of the battle at all. What they had seen in the desert defied the Roman worldview. These were men trained to stand unbroken before charging elephants, rampaging Gauls, and entire enemy phalanxes. They had survived sieges, raids, barbarian ambushes. They had killed and bled for the Republic, but nothing had prepared them for Parthia. Nothing had prepared them for an enemy that refused to stand and fight. Nothing had prepared them for arrows that fell from the sky like rain. Nothing had prepared them for the death of Publius, displayed like a mockery of honor. Nothing had prepared them for the moment Crassus collapsed, not from a mortal wound, but from despair. The survivors carried a humiliation deeper than defeat. They carried the memory of being powerless. Some of the returning men wrote letters home, fragments of grief etched in trembling script. My brother fell, and I could not reach him. The arrows came from nowhere. Every step, the sand drank more blood. I do not know how I am alive. I cannot sleep. I do not understand how Rome lost. These letters became whispers. Whispers became rumors. Rumors became legend. Rome had always feared being conquered from the outside. Carrhae taught Romans to fear being conquered from within. Fear of the unknown. Fear of a new kind of enemy. Fear of the desert itself. Carrhae lodged itself in the Roman psyche like a splinter. Historians would later argue that the psychological damage of Carrhae reached beyond the battlefield. It seeped into Roman culture. It changed how Romans viewed ambition, risk, and leadership. Crassus, once a titan of wealth, became a cautionary tale. Schoolmasters spoke of him with pity and disdain. Parents warned their sons not to chase glory blindly. Philosophers praised moderation and restraint, pointing to Carrhae as proof that hubris was deadly. Even the army changed its training. New recruits learned about Parthian tactics. Veterans taught them the importance of flexibility. Legates warned them that not all victories came through brute force. The ghost of Carrhae haunted the drill fields. Yet there was something else, something darker, that survived the battle. The sense that Rome had lost not simply an army, but part of its identity. Before Carrhae, Rome believed the world was divided into two types of people: those who conquered and those who were conquered. After Carrhae, that certainty vanished. Rome was forced to accept a foreign empire as an equal, forced to negotiate, forced to compromise, forced to accept that power has limits. Parthia, in defeating Crassus, had done what Carthage, Gaul, and even Greece had failed to do. Parthia humbled Rome, and humility, once learned, never leaves. But while the survivors of Carrhae bore their scars in silence, another group of men bore a different kind of fate. The captives, nearly 10,000 Romans vanished into Parthian lands. They were taken in chains, marched across deserts and mountains, dispersed across distant provinces. Some were forced to guard the eastern frontier. Some built canals and fortifications. Others were absorbed into local societies. The Parthians had no interest in ransoming them. Rome had no way of rescuing them. And so, they slipped out of Roman history, but not out of the world's memory. There were ancient stories, strange, almost fantastical, that whispered of Roman soldiers fighting in unfamiliar lands far beyond Parthian control. Tales of men who held their shields in rigid walls, confusing their enemies. Tales of disciplined formations appearing where they shouldn't exist. One Chinese chronicle described a mysterious group of soldiers captured in a war against nomads. They fought in a fish-scale formation, a term scholars believe may have described the Roman test d'eau. Whether myth or truth, these stories captivated historians for centuries. What happened to the lost legions of Carrhae? Did they fight on distant frontiers? Did they raise families in foreign lands? Did their Roman identity fade? Or did they carry it until their final days? We may never know, but the possibility alone reveals the immense reach of Carrhae's consequences, stretching beyond Rome, beyond Parthia, beyond the imagination of those who survived. Back in Rome, the people demanded vengeance. They demanded the eagles be returned. They demanded the sand be repaid with blood. And when Antony failed to deliver this vengeance, Rome turned on him with a fury sharpened by years of humiliation. The Senate erupted in anger. The public mocked him. Octavian wove his defeat into propaganda so potent that generations later, historians could still feel its venom. Antony had promised to cleanse the stain of Carrhae. Instead, he deepened it. Rome saw him not as a general who tried, but as a general who failed. The Republic, already teetering on its final legs, cracked further. Loyalty fractured, ambition surged. Suspicion poisoned every alliance. Antony and Octavian marched toward conflict, and Rome marched behind them, unwilling but unable to stop the collision. The fate of the Republic was set in motion not when Caesar crossed the Rubicon, but when Crassus crossed the Euphrates. Carrhae had started the unraveling. The final threads snapped at Actium. When Antony died in Cleopatra's arms, another chapter in Rome's eastern obsession closed. His dream of conquering Parthia died with him, but Rome's desire to erase humiliation lived on, brighter, hotter, more urgent than ever. And so, when Augustus finally reclaimed the eagles, Rome celebrated with a relief that bordered on religious ecstasy. But beneath the celebration, beneath the propaganda, beneath the monuments, there remained a deeper truth. Rome could never unsee Carrhae. It had become part of them. And what Carrhae truly meant would only reveal itself in the centuries to come, in the wars, the strategies, the political reforms, and the cultural memory that shaped the empire long after Augustus's triumph. Rome was healed, but not unchanged. Carrhae had rewritten the soul of the empire, and its echo still had one final chapter. The story of Carrhae did not end with Augustus' triumph. It did not end when the eagles returned. It did not end when monuments were raised and poets declared Rome avenged. Carrhae lived on. In the training camps, in the Senate halls, in the fears of generals, in the ambitions of emperors, in the nightmares of soldiers. Because Carrhae was more than a defeat. It was a revelation that reshaped the empire far beyond the lifetime of the men who fought that day. When the legions drilled on dusty parade grounds across the empire, instructors barked warnings drawn from the ghost of Carrhae. Never chase a retreating horseman. Never lose formation in the open plain. Never underestimate the East. Never trust a guide you don't control. Never divide your cavalry away from infantry support. These weren't mere rules. They were scars turned into doctrine. Veterans of Parthian wars trained recruits with a seriousness bordering on fear. They described arrows that fell like rain, enemies who moved like shadows, deserts that swallowed whole battalions. Young soldiers listened with wide eyes, realizing for the first time that Rome's legions were not invincible, only disciplined, only resilient, only mortal. Carrhae became a lesson taught in blood. Even centuries later, when emperors like Trajan and Septimius Severus launched their own campaigns into the east, Carrhae hovered over every strategy meeting. Commanders unfolded their maps with trembling respect. They studied desert terrain with almost superstitious caution. They asked the same questions Crassus never had. Where will water come from? How do we counter mounted archers? What lines of retreat exist? Where might Parthian scouts ambush us? Rome no longer marched blindly into the east. It tiptoed, because it had learned, through catastrophe, that the desert was not land to conquer, but land to survive. Culturally, Carrhae twisted itself into Roman storytelling like a vine around a dying tree. Every historian, every poet, every playwright who touched on the subject could feel its weight. Crassus became a symbol of greed, a warning that ambition without wisdom leads to ruin. Publius became a symbol of youthful bravery, a hero cut down by his father's folly. Surena became a symbol of brilliance, admired even by his enemies. The lost legions became a symbol of tragedy, men erased from their homeland's memory. Roman mothers whispered Carrhae's name to their sons. Roman fathers prayed their children would never serve in the East. Roman generals invoked Carrhae to justify caution or, at times, cowardice. It wasn't simply a story, it was a ghost. A haunting reminder that empires survive not because they never fall, but because they rise every time they do. And yet, even in defeat, Rome found something unexpected, a deeper understanding of itself. Carrhae showed Rome that its greatest enemy was not Parthia, nor the desert, nor arrows falling from the sky. Its greatest enemy was pride. Had Crassus listened to Cassius? Had he respected the desert? Had he waited for Pompey or Caesar? Had he embraced patience instead of glory? 40,000 men might have lived. The Republic might have survived. Civil war might have been delayed or avoided. The Roman world might have taken a different shape. But history does not bend for might have been. History only bends for what is. And what was a disaster that tore a hole through the heart of the Republic. The political shockwaves of Carrhae resonated long after Augustus' reign. Every emperor who sought to invade Parthia felt its weight. Caligula dreamed of attacking Parthia, but did nothing. Claudius thought of it and abandoned the idea. Nero made plans, but never acted. Hadrian avoided it entirely. Marcus Aurelius considered it and hesitated. Commodus refused to risk it. Septimius Severus tried and failed to hold ground. Caracalla attempted to emulate Alexander and died for it. Carrhae haunted them all. The emperors of Rome could conquer Europe, Africa, and the Mediterranean, but the East remained a battlefield soaked in ancestral fear. Carrhae was a reminder, written in sand and blood. Do not underestimate Parthia. Do not trust the desert. Do not repeat Crassus' arrogance. And yet, they did. Again and again. Even in the far future, centuries after Parthia fell, and Rome transformed into the Byzantine Empire, the legacy of Carrhae lingered. Generals facing the Sassanid Empire, Parthia's successor, still studied Surena's tactics. Horse archers still haunted Roman formations. The desert still swallowed entire legions. Rome survived many disasters. Teutoburg Forest, Adrianople, the sack of Rome. But Carrhae remained unique. Carrhae was not a single moment of failure. It was a mirror held up to Rome's face, forcing it to see what it had always denied. Even giants bleed. Now imagine the battlefield of Carrhae itself, centuries later. The bones are gone. The sand is quiet. The wind has erased all traces of Roman footsteps. No monuments stand. No plaques. No warnings carved in stone. And yet, if you listen closely, you can almost hear the echoes. The rattle of arrows in quivers. The thunder of hooves. The crack of armor under Parthian shafts. The screams of men who had never known fear until that day. The silence that fell after Crassus died. The desert remembers. Even when the world forgets. Even when books turn to dust. Even when empires crumble. The desert remembers Carrhae. Because Carrhae was not just a battlefield. It was a lesson, a scar, a turning point. A warning carved into the very soul of ancient history. And before this story ends, there is one final truth. A truth about why Carrhae continues to fascinate us today, thousands of years later. A truth that reveals what this battle really meant. A truth that pulls everything together. And that truth lies in how Carrhae changed the destiny of the world. Carrhae is remembered as Rome's greatest humiliation. A battlefield where its legions were broken, its commander slain, its pride shattered in the scorching desert wind. But the true legacy of Carrhae is far greater, far deeper, and far more astonishing than the defeat itself. Carrhae did not simply change a battle, it changed the course of history. To understand why, we must look beyond the bodies in the sand, beyond Crassus, beyond Surena, beyond the eagles. We must look at the world that emerged because of Carrhae, a world forever altered by that single moment of madness, ambition, and devastation. If Crassus had won, Rome would not have hesitated to march deeper into the east. Parthia might have fallen. The deserts of Iran might have become Roman provinces. The Mediterranean and Mesopotamia might have merged under one flag. Caesar might not have crossed the Rubicon. Antony might not have risen. Cleopatra might not have fallen. Augustus might never have been crowned the first emperor. The Roman Empire, the one we know, might never have existed. Carrhae preserved Parthia. Parthia preserved the balance of power. The balance of power preserved the fragility of the Republic. Rome was changed not by victory, but by failure. A failure so catastrophic it forced Rome to examine itself, to adapt, to evolve, to confront its own mortality. Carrhae did what no Roman enemy had ever done. It taught Rome humility. Yet what makes Carrhae eternally compelling is not just the geopolitical fallout, the military transformation, or the political chaos that followed. What captivates us, even now, thousands of years later, are the human stories trapped inside that tragedy. Crassus, the richest man in Rome, whose greed blinded him until the desert swallowed him whole. Publius, the brave son who charged into battle because he believed his father needed him and died for it. Surena, the brilliant Parthian general who delivered Rome's greatest defeat, only to be executed by his own jealous king. The legionaries, hardened men who had conquered half the world, brought to their knees by an enemy they did not understand. The 10,000 captives, marched east into lands so distant that even Rome's vast memory could not follow. Antony, who tried to erase the shame of Carrhae and failed, dragging his own destiny down with him. Augustus, who healed Rome not with a sword, but with diplomacy, retrieving the lost eagles without spilling a drop of Roman blood. These stories of ambition and arrogance, of loyalty and loss, of brilliance and betrayal, form a tapestry that stretches from the heart of Rome to the edge of Asia. Carrhae is not merely a battle. It is a tragedy, a warning, a myth, a turning point in the story of humanity. And perhaps that is why Carrhae continues to captivate us, because in its stark, brutal simplicity, Carrhae reveals a truth as old as civilization itself. Empires are not destroyed by their enemies. Empires are destroyed by their leaders. Crassus did not fall because Parthia was unstoppable. He fell because he believed he was. He marched into a desert he did not understand, against an army he did not respect, guided by a man he did not trust, driven by a desire he could not control. Ambition without wisdom, confidence without knowledge, glory without humility. That is the true battlefield where Rome died at Carrhae. But Rome rose again, transformed, cautious, strategic, patient, forged by defeat. In the centuries that followed, Rome would conquer countless territories, build breathtaking monuments, wage unforgettable wars. But it would never again march into the east with blind arrogance. The desert had taught it well. Carrhae became a permanent memory, a scar Rome carried like an amulet against repeating its own mistakes. Because every empire falls, every empire forgets, every empire grows proud. But the desert remembers. And the story of Carrhae stands as a reminder to empires, to nations, to leaders. And to us, that greatness is never guaranteed, and downfall is never far. 40,000 men marched into the desert. Almost none returned, their bones lost to time, their egos reclaimed by diplomacy. Their story carved deeper than any triumph. Carrhae changed Rome. Carrhae shaped the world. Carrhae endures. And in the silent wind that sweeps across that ancient plain, if you listen closely, you can still hear the echoes. The rattle of arrows, the thunder of hooves, the final cry of a legion dying under an unrelenting sun. A place where no one survived. A defeat Rome would never forget. A battle that changed history forever.